And that is a first in the world. Nobody else has connected 2 EV batteries to a single Fox inverter, as far as I'm aware. This video is sponsored by Versal. More on them later. So people, I've gone and done it. I brought myself another Model 3 battery. In fact, this time it's a Model Y battery for home energy storage. But there's also bigger reasons why I've done this, and I'll get back to that in a future video. But the battery I brought came with 0% state of charge in the vehicle. So we need to find out if I brought a good one or if I have in fact brought a duff one. Now, I purchased this originally to replace the PCS from the damaged battery, and then I was going to worry about closing the contactors. But it'll be a good opportunity to show you guys, or to remind you, if you haven't seen my other videos, what it takes to liven up a Tesla Model 3 battery. It's actually not that complicated once you know what you're doing. So let's get started. Now, step one is the connector that comes on the vehicle. You've got to connect up to the motor output. We've got a little fuse in the fuse holder, and we have a capacitor across our inputs. This is needed to fool the vehicle into thinking it has a motor connected, and that should be on the DIN rail. Okay, and then outputting that, I've got 10mm DC cable. So close to the battery is a good opportunity to fuse it, and it's a good opportunity to bring it down to the size cables we need for the solar inverter. So let's go and connect that up. I got myself a well-positioned jack here. We just need to connect this up to power, and then we can see if these contactors close. Fingers crossed. Please work, please work, please. Then of course, in this corner of our battery, we've got to connect up our 12 volts where the power comes from to close the contactors, and our BMS and CAN communication. And there's another couple of things here to fool the battery into closing. Okay, so most of our connections are in this area, so I'll run over that. We've got 2 lots of 12 volts. We've got the main 12 volts, which I've used brown here, and then blue for the negative. That goes back to our battery, and we've also got 12 volts attached to this. So I've bunched them all together. So all of our 12 volts come here, and then we've just got one line that goes to our battery. Because this is only rear wheel drive, we've got a 60 ohm resistor inside the white heat shrink here, which fools the battery into thinking it has a motor connected. And then we have our CAN line, which has a terminating resistor, 120 ohm resistor, which is then following back our CAN line all the way to the LilyGo. So that's most of our connections in one single plug. If only there was somebody that made these plugs, hey? The one final thing then we need to do to get this battery to operate is to please our high voltage interlock system. Now that is basically an entire circuit that leads back to the BMS inside this penthouse, and it's just a circuit that proves that all of the connectors are closed, basically, that there's no break in the system. And you will find an interlock on every single EV battery. It's just a 3 or 5 volt circuit that just runs around. So over this end of the battery, I've ran the CAN wire over to this little battery here because I need it to be long enough to fit to the inverter later if this works. And I cannot find my RJ45 tool, and the only cutoff of cable that I've got will only let me get to here. So I've kind of had to mix it in the middle. But it should just be as simple as connecting this battery up to the Liligo, and then we'll be able to read the output. Now, here's our Liligo with our 2 CAN inputs here from the battery. We've got CAN high and CAN low. There's a built-in resistor in this, 120 ohm. This has been flashed with the latest version of the battery emulator project on GitHub. The code has been reverse engineered, which allows the contactors to open, and we're able to see individual cell voltages within this pack, so that's pretty cool. I've also attached on the back another CAN bus then to connect to the inverter, which is pretty much like the other setup, hoping that this will work. So yeah. If you want to know how to flash the battery emulator, check out Darla's YouTube channel. Now, this is a buck converter, which is giving me 5 volts for both of these boards. I could just supply 5 volt power into it with a USB-C cable, because there's USB-C on that, connected up to a socket. But I also need 5 volts for the other board in a bit, so... Nothing. Okay, 1 minute. Okay, second try. Woohoo! There we go, there we go. There we go, the contactors have closed. Let's measure our voltage down there, eh? Yes! Okay, so what voltage do we have down here?
See, all done. Raj. Yeah. Grab the cat. Grab the cat. Get back! Take back!
Okay, so there we are. We have a healthy voltage. This is good news. I'm going to look at that on the battery emulator webpage and see what else we can glean. We want to know that these cells, these individual cells, are all pretty closely balanced, and then we'll try giving it a charge. Yeah. Okay, so how is our pack looking? Well, despite showing 0% in the vehicle, we have a state of charge here of 3.3%, so it looks like there's some energy. And if we look a bit further down, we see there is 2 kilowatts remaining according to this. That is a good sign. It looks like we might have a good battery here. But what about our individual cells? What about the imbalance between them? Okay, so there is some imbalance here, but they are all pretty healthy. 76 millivolts is more than I would like, but given that most of these packs tend to get themselves to a bit of an imbalanced state when they're low, I don't think that's too bad, and we'll see if that recovers. If we had a cell there that was at 2 volts or 0 volts, then we know that we would have a problem, but that's all fairly even. Okay, so what sort of life has this battery had? We saw that it was around 12,000 miles that this battery had been through with the information that was sent by the seller, and we see there a total discharge and total charge of about 5,000 kilowatts. And for a 60 kilowatt hour battery pack that's had about 5,000 kilowatt hours through it, that's about 83.3 charges, so nothing for a lithium iron phosphate battery. This battery should be able to do, if we treated it really bad, 2,000 to 3,000 cycles, But in reality, we should get a lot more out of this. And with them being in their fixed position, I really hope that I can push this to 5, maybe even 10,000 cycles. Let's see how much power it still has at that stage, hey? So with all this in mind, I think we're ready to try and connect this up to the inverter and see if it will take a charge, hey? Okay, so with this battery outputting power now, I've got to turn it off and see if it will connect to the inverter. We're in unknown territory right now. We do not know if you can connect 2 EV batteries, but let's think about it. There's no logical reason why not, because if we're emulating 1 battery, then surely we can just emulate 2. Let's find out. So I'll disconnect my power down here, which should knock us off. There we go, contactors open. And let's go shutting down this inverter. And then our 2 battery inputs will go here. Okay, so with those connected up, let's try turning this back on and see if we get our state of charge and the ability to send power, because that battery definitely needs a charge, doesn't it? So they've closed the contactors with our battery connected up to the inverter. Let's have a look. Hello people, so it is the next day. I didn't bother filming all of that because I was having some trouble getting this to show up, but it turns out there's a sequence. You basically have to restart the inverter, and for me, getting the battery to show up, the second battery to show up first, seemed to be the right fix for me. And that is a first in the world. Nobody else has connected 2 EV batteries to a single Fox inverter, as far as I'm aware. Now, can we just take a moment to appreciate this little board? It's a Liligo. It's £10, $10 from China, and it has an ESP32 powering it, which has Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. Well, we put the Wi-Fi to use, don't we? But more importantly, it has a CAN input here. And it's crazy because this board, paired with an open source project on GitHub, the battery emulator project, we're able to read the status of EV batteries, and we're able then to output them for solar inverters. And that's quite impressive when you consider that the list of batteries just a year ago was quite slim. But now, so many more, because continually people are adding more and more batteries onto this as they work out and decipher the CAN data, or in some cases other data, for these batteries. A board like this is going to be so useful to anybody that is wanting to replace or repair any electric vehicle. If you can read the state of the battery outside of the vehicle, you're going to know whether it's a good one or whether it's a bad one based on the voltages, the cell balance, and whether you can close contactors or not. This is not just a Tesla thing. This is an amazing open source thing that anybody can take advantage of, and all of that for the price of a Liligo, the free software, and some wiring that is going to depend on your vehicle. But again, a lot of these different wiring plugs can be purchased off AliExpress. That massively impresses me. An open source project, not behind a paywall, something that you could get involved in if you want, something that I can get involved in, and I have. If you value open source projects, and if you think that the battery emulator is pretty cool, then check out in the description below the link to that on GitHub, and please drop a little star to say that you appreciate it. And while you're at it, why not like and subscribe to these videos, hey? So can we just appreciate, with this battery and this battery, we have a total of 120 kilowatt hours of storage that we can use through this 30 kilowatt inverter. Now that is a lot of energy storage, isn't it? Probably way more than the average house needs, and we need to work out how we're going to use that the most efficient, basically. When we add that into what I've got in the house, we are talking over 135 kilowatt hours. Now, even if we had a couple of electric cars, that is at least a couple of days worth of charge. But in reality, that would keep us going for days if we wanted to use it like that. So there we have it. With that battery fully charged, and if we discharge it now, that is now discharging at 30 kilowatts. So there we have it. 30 kilowatts out of the inverter as it was designed, and we've put it to use with something a little bit different. Okay people, it's a few days later and something's happened. Yeah, I've started using this as a storing area. That tape measure's broken, I don't even know why it's in here anymore. Anyway, it's been running for about a week or two, practically flawlessly. There is one slight issue, which I'll talk about when I show you over there. So as you can tell, it's been nice and neat for the last 2 weeks. We have had one incident where my son or I stood on one of those connectors, but anyway, we sorted it. It just knocked the communication down for a short time. And here we are. So it's currently discharging at 3000 watts, which is pretty impressive. We've got the full use of this inverter now, and it's nice and warm and it's cold out here. So during testing, it's working okay. There's one slight issue and I haven't got to the bottom of it, but occasionally it loses the details, the state of charge for inverter 2. So I need to work out what's going on there. We might need to change some code to wake it up. But let's just take a minute to appreciate what we've done here. So we've got a Fox H3 Pro, 30 kilowatt inverter, massive inverter for an average house. And we've done something which hasn't been done at all in the world up until now. We've connected an EV battery to it. And I genuinely believe that in the world, I'm probably the only person that has a Fox H3 Pro connected to an EV battery. And remember back to that video a couple of months ago now, Darla had to write new code to make this work. So I kept you busy, haven't I?
Yes, you have. You picked a very tricky inverter, yes. Yeah, we found out that the inverter that you picked, which was the Fox ESS H3, the 3-phase version, is very different compared to the single-phase version. It doesn't even accept the same battery types anymore. So yeah, we had a lot of work to add integration for this inverter type.
So under his battery emulator, no one else had done it, and I just don't believe that anybody's done it any different way with any other software. But not just that, we've now got 2 batteries connected to it, outputting our full 30 kilowatts, and I believe that that alone is a first in the world. Nobody else has connected 2 EV batteries to a single Fox inverter. Pretty impressive, eh? Okay, so how have I ended up with 2 batteries? I kind of got this inverter on the off chance that I might end up with 2 batteries one day in the future, but genuinely didn't expect to end up with 2 batteries quite so quickly. Well, if you remember back to the video that was a couple of months ago where I broke this PCS, I damaged the board inside there and I needed to find an option to replace it. And I had 2 options: get another battery, take the PCS out of that and worry about dealing with that one in future. And I was exploring that while I was also exploring finding a part. In the UK, they seem very difficult to find. Nobody wants to break the packs up. So I explored both of those options. And this is where the sponsor of our video comes in, partversal.co.uk. They saw my problem and offered a solution. They had a Tesla Model 3 battery that was exactly the same as the one that I had, that was on 0% in the car. So potentially it could be revived, and potentially the cells were past it, they've gone too low. And as we found out, it's good. Partversal are based in Europe and deliver all across Europe. There is something nice about not having to pick up a 500 kilo weight yourself and bring it back home. Instead, just getting it delivered by a seller that's honest with what they're selling. Wow. I've genuinely been so happy with the service I've had from them, and I've been able to secure you guys a deal. 5% off with the code BatteryMan. Check them out, partversal.co.uk. Now, I'm going to need your advice on this battery. We've got it to live. We've got it connected up to the inverter, but I've got to work out some way or somewhere to mount this. I'm thinking the inside wall of that garage, but with this being a single skin brick wall, it's not particularly that strong. So I think this time we've got to build up a steel frame, perhaps with some sort of wheels. There is a chap on Darla's Discord who has already done this, and I might be able to use or copy some of those ideas. But my skills with welding are not great, but it could be entertaining, couldn't it? Yeah. Until next time, Battery Man out. Now it's just touch them. Oops. Hope they ain't outputting power. I might check that in a minute. Now, it's very odd to me to see this battery cover not smashed in. There is a lot of extra room behind here, and I wonder why Tesla chose to do that. My guess is so that these mounting points for what I presume is the seat base were in the right position. But there is a lot of extra room. Now, I'm going to reach out to you guys. You might know a way to make it happen, possibly through plastic forming or possibly through 3D printing, but I would really like to have a clear cover on this battery. I think it's going to turn around and go kind of in that space on the wall there, I think at the minute, but I'd just like to be able to see inside this. I know once you've seen it a few times it isn't anything special, but also this battery is just largely a black box, so let's give it a bit of character, hey? So yeah, if you know any way that I could do that, or anyone that can perhaps make contact with me about that, then please let me know. I think the challenge is finding the right shape, but I think there are people out there that have done 3D scanning of this, so there's potential that we could find a way. It's out of my scope, I don't really know, so I'm leaving it to you. Help!